Okay. Okay, I see there's a few folks here. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. And is my screen look normal or is it reversed to you? Many things I did not plan for today. Yes, it looks normal. Okay, good, because OBS does something. I was forewarned that OBS does something, and it makes it look backwards to me. So if it looks normal to you, then great. Unfortunately, thank you for joining. This wasn't the original stream that I had intended. Unfortunately, I didn't figure out YouTube Studio in advance. I just made this really bad assumption that I could jump in and share my screen like a Zoom session or something, and that's not the case. Fortunately, I've used OBS at least a couple times, so I was able to move to that, but I didn't have enough time to set up and share my screen. So we'll have to try this without my webcam, which is perfectly fine. I'll probably try this again and just use this as the learning experience that it was. Without that, though, or with that on the side, I guess we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Please let me know if run into any issues with audio or video. Hopefully everything is good and stable, though. So first, thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to share this link one more time to the new session here. I probably should just post that on LinkedIn. That way, if anybody is looking for it, there we go. Okay, perfect. So thank you all for being here, and especially for kind of wading through these technical difficulties with me. Again, I didn't mean to start it off with a bit of problems, but I guess it happens. Life happens, and we'll roll through that. I want to especially thank anyone who spent some time filling out the survey in advance. If you didn't get a chance to do that, I will definitely do these sessions again and share just a real brief survey to help me get some ideas as to what can be helpful. I get asked a lot about, where to get started, how to get started in malware, how to get started in RE, and so it's hard to provide a lot of one-on-one mentorship. So I just was motivated to do this and hopefully reach a slightly broader audience. So yeah, next time do the session, I'll do the same thing. I'll send out kind of an invite, schedule it on YouTube, send out a survey, a Google form to just give me some ideas. What we're going to cover today, get back to my PowerPoint here, is an introduction, just give you a brief background about me and kind of where my career has taken me. We'll talk a little bit about degrees, certifications. We'll talk a little bit about interviews. Then we'll get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of malware analysis and reverse engineering before kind of ending on the what's next foot. Where will I take this next, and what can you look forward to or expect out of me here in the coming months? Lot of different areas we can go, and so this was meant to be that high level. Let's just kind of set a baseline. Let's talk about all of the things to consider as you're looking at a career in malware analysis in RE, and then from there. Yeah, Bob Ross he's looking good, isn't he? And then from there, we could have follow-on sessions that start going down the different paths, looking at different tools, getting into more of the actual hands-on details. So not necessarily going to get too technical today. I do have a few things to help on the technical side to get started, but I'm planning on doing those kind of at a later date. Of course, if you have questions along the way, let me know. I'm happy to. I'm going to keep my eye on the chat, and so if there's anything that comes up, we'll try to address it here as we go. Certainly, end of time at the end of the session too, and just hang out and chat about anything. A little bit about me here for those that don't know who I am. And mainly, I provide this just so you have some insight into where my cyber experience and my background comes from. I do consulting through M9 Cyber, training, content development, penetration tests, high-level security advice, that kind of stuff. I also teach at Dakota State University through mainly in our PhD programs, but really at all academic levels, malware analysis, reverse engineering. I work part-time at HP Wolf Security, that was formerly Bromium, if anyone happens to be familiar with that. Do some training or some work with OISF, that is the foundation that supports the Suricata project. Suricata is an IDS, IPS, NSM, so your network monitoring. On Author at Plural site, you can check out my courses there if you'd like. And then I just recently retired from the Air National Guard. So if I'd had my my video shared, you'd see I'm in this obligatory phase of not shaving my beard or cutting my hair. So we'll see how long that lasts. Question about, will Microsoft's Pluton chip hurt RE? I don't know. I haven't come across that yet. So I'll have to take note of that and do a little bit of digging, Dave, and maybe that's something we could talk about at a later date. But off the top of my head, I don't know. Prerequisites for malware. Okay, we're going to get into that. So I'm just going to keep rolling here. So anyone who's looking at, well, I mean, it's really, I think, applicable to any part of your career across the board. But really for those that are getting started, is to have a plan, to know where you're headed, because that can help you determine the steps to get started. So think about where you want your career to be. It's a malware analysis. Well, how do you know you're going to like malware analysis? It can be a little tricky because some of these fields, some of these professions, cybersecurity is so broad. There's so many things that we can do, from technical to non-technical to both. Some of them are positions you find yourself in a little bit later in your career. Malware analysis, just because it has so many, there's a lot of skill that goes into it. I find a lot of positions looking for more experienced people. And so maybe you have to start a little bit further back in a SOC or something. And so you have to keep that in mind and work that into a plan so that you understand not only the education that you need, the skills that you need to possess, but then also the opportunities that you need to seek out. As I mentioned, malware analysis includes a pretty wide variety of skills. At least I have found a number of skills to be very helpful for me over the years. Before I got into malware analysis, I spent the first 10 or 12 years of my career doing software development. And I feel that even though I wasn't what I would call a low-level software developer, I didn't program in C, I didn't program in C++. I did absolutely terrible at assembly in college. So there's hope for those of you that maybe are going through assembly right now and going, what is this? I don't like this stuff. I did absolutely terrible at it. I didn't see the relevance or the need. And so most of my early years I spent doing .NET sort of enterprise web software development. But I found with that experience, when I made the transition into malware analysis and then doing more reverse engineering, it was really helpful because I understood programming logic. I still understood control structures and patterns. And it just was a different way of looking at them due to the environment, the tools, and the language. So a lot of skills that are needed. With that being said, you don't necessarily need RE skills to be good as a malware analyst. I would say that if you want to take it to its extremes and climb the ladder of positions, then you're going to need RE skills. But there's still a lot that can be done on a day-to-day basis around malware analysis, around threat hunting, around your cyber defense that doesn't necessarily involve getting into IDA Pro or getting into Ghidra. Reverse engineering can be daunting. And I don't mean that as a negative thing. I mean that as something that can be, it's the challenge that a lot of folks really find engaging and that keeps them pushing and striving. I've looked at a number of samples over the year. I use like some of them that I use for my classes, and every year I have a group of students, digging into these samples with me, and it seems like almost every year I learn something new about those same samples. And so there's just a never-ending opportunity to continue to grow, to continue to expand your knowledge and your skills. With that, though, getting started can be daunting. It can be really hard to understand where exactly should I be in order to get good, to get proficient at this. And that's hopefully what the series of sessions will help with. Devise a career plan and don't think of this as just a one and done type of a thing. I would encourage you to look at something that would help you, fill in a plan and achieve those career goals that you have for the week, for the month, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. as far out as you want. It's going to change, no doubt about that. And you're going to, as you maybe gain experience or take advantage of opportunities, find that, oh, I don't really like reverse engineering, or I'd rather do malware analysis, or I'd rather be a red teamer, or I'd rather go into incident response. Whatever the case may be, you continue to update that, and that continues to grow with you as you progress in your career. But having that can help you then to see not only the short term, where do I want to be by the end of this year, but the long term, where do I want to be 10 years from now? And there could be things that you need to change in this career plan in order to make those long-term goals. It goes by quick. I had 20 years in the Guard. I can't believe it's already done. It felt like forever when I was doing it, but it's done, it's come and gone, and now it's time for the next chapter. Oftentimes, can I list RE skill set? Yes, so we're going to get into some RE skills, more specific skills here as we get towards the end. So hang tight. If I did not answer your question, though, as we get closer, I figure I'll talk for about an hour. So if I haven't answered your questions by then, let me know, and definitely I'll circle back to that. So oftentimes, as we're talking early career stuff, or mid-career transitions, or I want to get into this field or discipline, the conversation about degrees and certifications comes up. Do you need a degree? Do you need certifications? I would say the simple answer is no, but there are reasons to consider it. I've met a lot of people over the years, both as a developer and as someone who's in a cybersecurity profession, who are amazing, talented individuals that have no certifications, that have no degrees. I have a doctoral degree because I'm an academic, and that's probably the only reason that I pursued an advanced degree, is because I needed it for my own career progression. That's not to say that I feel I've I've had a lot of value from that process that I went through. But again, I probably wouldn't have pursued it had I not been in an academic position. For others, some of the pros I think that come along with degrees and certifications is that they lay out a plan. They help to give you a path. These are the things you need to study. This is how then you can test those skills. Usually you get a lab environment, you get hands-on exercises, and then you get proof. So especially those that are newer and earlier in their career, that proof, that demonstration of knowledge and ability can be very helpful to give you an edge. There are other ways to do it, of course, but these are maybe a little bit more organized, a little bit more structured, and thus why people find them helpful. Taking a 4-year degree, that's a big time commitment, so you can kind of look at that as a con. There's definitely a lot of expense to it, depending on where you go. But it also gives you access along the way to, hopefully instructors, professors that have experience that can help mentor and guide as well outside of just the coursework. Certifications, very much the same. They're going to have a cost, probably not as much as getting a degree. And they're going to represent then a certain ability that you would bring to an employer. Academia, there's no shortage of programs now. I mean, you can almost, just search cyber degrees and you'll find every institution under the sun is trying to offer those. I teach at a university that's no different. We have a lot of cyber degrees. We've actually been doing offering those degrees though for a very long time, all the way back to the early 2000s, which is probably before some of you were born. A master's program, so advanced graduate degrees, doctoral programs, there's no shortage of options. And I'm not here to push DSU, Dakota State University. You've got to look at the programs and you've got to make the right decision based off of what they offer you. If you're not sure, reach out to someone in the program, look at the course listing, try to get a feel for maybe a few of the professors that are in the program. Do they publish? Do they have YouTube channels? Do they whatever? And get a sense, because some of the programs will be very technical and some of them will not. They'll not be very technical, or they'll be very theoretical. And if that's not what you're looking for, then you don't want to find yourself in a situation where now you've committed time and money. There are an amazing number of resources online. Somebody's already mentioned it in the chat. There is definitely some opportunities with things like cyber defenders. I'm going to touch on that in a little bit. But between YouTube alone and all the video and some really great video content out there, places like Pluralsight, of course, I'm going to plug that. That's where I publish some of my content. Cyber defenders, platforms, researchers like Malware Traffic Analysis, there's just a lot of great resources. And so being able to utilize those to help fill in the knowledge gaps are just a really great opportunity that I encourage everyone to take advantage of. Places like Cyber Defenders, if you haven't been there, take a second and search for it. They provide a free CTF platform, so it's a great place to test your skills by trying to solve challenges and submit flags. And they also provide a Discord community. So not only do you have an opportunity to engage in the platform, but then you get to go and join a community. You get to reach out for help. You get to network with others that might be learning the same concepts or on the same part of their career journey that you are. So definitely consider that. And again, a lot of these are for free. So landing that first job, I say, oh no, here we go again, because I had to figure out a way to work in a Picard meme because it's Picard. But what I've heard, and I've heard this now throughout most of my technical career, this conundrum of we want entry level folks, but man, they better have 2, 3, 4 years of experience before we hire them. And I don't know what the secret is to that. That's a tough one. I question organizations that's their job posting, because that doesn't seem to match up. And maybe those for that organization who are posting are not quite in tune with what they're actually looking for. It happens, right? HR departments can post. They might not understand the technical needs. Recruiters can be working on behalf of a company. They might not quite understand exactly what the company is looking for. So there are definitely, that is just, definitely something to look for, but I would encourage everyone to not get too frustrated by it. There are lots of jobs out there. There's a very high demand for cybersecurity. I know there's trackers and stuff that you can go check out. And so, it's just something that you got to work through. Internships can help. Question about that. Yeah, I mean, I've been a part of a number of internships that have been both remote and online, or I'm sorry, remote, online, as well as in person, and even some that are a bit of a hybrid. The last couple of years with the pandemic has really hurt that. A lot of internships, a lot of organizations have just decided to cancel those just because it was too difficult with all of the with the issues that were going on along that time. So kind of set aside the pandemic, there definitely are some opportunities to do that, depending on what you're looking for, depending on what are the requirements. If it's a place like DSU, we've got sometimes there's a citizenship requirement because of where maybe you might find yourself working. Easiest thing to do is I would say a couple of things. Let's see if that's my next. My next point is to network. So universities are going to post internship availabilities. You can find those readily available on most university websites. You can find opportunities through your networks, and if you're not working with those that are already in doing cybersecurity in your part of the world, start working with them. You can go almost anywhere now and find local security conferences. Those are a great place to go and build your network. Your network is important, and I would say for me personally, and I'm sure this is something that many folks would echo who are a little ways into their career. A lot of my successes, big and small, have been in part what I know, a part just kind of simple dumb luck, and another part knowing the right people at the right time, and then being in the right place at the right time. So definitely build that network because that can help you to find those opportunities, those internship opportunities. They're not limited to just those going to college, although you might find that there are going to be some that are looking for students, students that are enrolled in a 2 or 4 year program. So every opportunity, you're going to have to look at the requirements to see whether they're virtual or not. You're going to have to see, but there are definitely opportunities out there to do virtual. In my opinion, work does not necessarily equal passion. I love what I do. I love teaching. I love training. I love sharing whatever knowledge I've acquired in my life. I've come to really like presenting. It was something that terrified me earlier in my career, which is, I suppose, what drove me to getting into higher education. I find myself doing a lot of cyber stuff kind of throughout the day, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be the thing that you do for money, for free, as a volunteer. Your time is valuable. You only get so much of it. So make the most of it, and don't forget you also need to take a break. we need to have a work-life balance. And yeah, if you don't find other hobbies outside of computers, I personally think burnout is real, and it's something that can be hard to overcome. I've struggled with it over the last couple of years. It can be hard to overcome, and so you just want to make sure that you're keeping a healthy balance. Build your public profile, never hurts. I mean, become the next YouTuber if that's something that you want to achieve. Share your journey. You can ask these kind of questions as you build a community around LinkedIn, and you can look for help. You can post your successes and get encouragement for others, and do that on other social media platforms. I'm mainly on LinkedIn and Twitter, so that's why I pick LinkedIn, just because it's usually on kind of in my sphere of influence. Commit some code to some projects, maybe tackle an issue, get to learn that project and the thing that it represents. Suricata, for example, go to the project, look for an issue. You get to learn what Suricata does. It'll help you be a better defender. It'll help you be a better malware analyst along the way. And then it also raises that public profile, because likely folks that are going to interview you are going to look for that type of activity online. Okay, technical interviews. Interviews that may have a technical component to them. Full disclosure, I've interviewed with a number of big tech over the years. Google was probably the most interesting for me. I went through the whole process a couple of years ago, got an offer, things just didn't work out. So I obviously didn't take it. But it took about 4 months, start to finish. It started with a recruiter. He was an awesome recruiter, really good, but he was just there to give that first level of assessment and then move me on in the process, in which then there was a number of interviews that had to ensue. The ones that probably caused me yeah, so Travis, hey Travis, Travis made a comment here about how GitHub shows potential employers their actual skills versus whiteboard coding, and that's kind of what I was going to get at, because the places that I've gone through, every one of them had a coding session, a technical portion of it, depending on the position. You might be asked to do some RE, you might be asked to do some network traffic analysis, you might be asked to build a program that sorts inventory. Well, it's a lot of different opportunities, but almost every one of them was in this really contrived scenario in which I was either in a room with a whiteboard and no access to any resources, or it was virtual. I did a couple of them virtually, and it was kind of the same thing. Here's a virtual whiteboard, and you need to figure out how to write this program without any resources as somebody's watching everything that you're doing. So it's a bit nerve-wracking, and I don't feel it necessarily represents how good of a coder you are. I think what ultimately most of the companies are looking for is just to hear you go through your thought process. So verbalizing that, being able to articulate that, but nonetheless, it's really challenging to do. You could look at my code on GitHub and you could see me do a live coding session, and you'd probably say that person isn't the same person. So I do as well. I think GitHub is a great place to start building and establishing those skills, because live coding sessions are very, I don't know, I don't want to make them sound more than they are, but they are a bit nerve-wracking. At least that was my experience with them. You're going to get a bunch of material to prep. It's going to maybe feel a bit overwhelming, and you have to decide, I think, for yourself how you want to handle that. As I've gotten older, I've come to this sort of realization in life. I know what I know, and I don't know what I don't know, and I'm comfortable with that. So I have enough knowledge now built up over the years that if there's something I'm encountered or something I'm asked and I don't know how to answer that, I'm okay saying that. In fact, I would encourage everyone, if you don't know something, it's much better to just say, I don't know, than to try to kind of guess your way through a response. But if you are constantly saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, well, that doesn't probably make you feel like you're having a good interview. And so that could also just be an indication that you're not ready for the position. And that's okay. It's an opportunity to learn. It helps you to identify either it isn't a job I want to pursue, or these are things that I need to get better at, so that when I do find myself in this position, you're really ready to rock and roll on it. So don't be afraid to say, I don't know. Okay, Mitre Attack. I felt like it was an obligation to throw this in, and we're not going to go through all of it, but what I like to use Mitre Attack for, if you're not familiar, Mitre is a corporation, the Mitre Corporation, been around for a long time. They've developed this attack matrix. This is sort of a offensive-minded thing. It lays out the major phases that adversaries go through when attacking organizations and users, and then under each, so those major phases like reconnaissance, resource dev, initial access, execution, and then underneath each one of those, there's different techniques. I think this is also a great training aid, because when I look at malware analysis, for example, I'm going to look at something like Mitre Attack, and I'm going to say, okay, where if I'm doing malware analysis, if I'm doing threat research, if I'm helping to defend an organization, what do I know about all of these different phases? What tools do I need? What tools help me get what data? What products do we use or tools do we use in the environment to help mitigate or defend against this? And so I think this becomes a good way of looking at and really developing a plan to help with learning, to help with getting better at malware analysis, reverse engineering, because reverse engineering will become far more important as you move from left to right on this attack matrix. The type of artifacts that you'll find will be more difficult to analyze. Your skills will need to be, generally speaking, a bit greater. So this can help. And then with each one of these, if you've not looked around Mitre Attack much, you can pick a technique and you can drill into it. You can get some ideas as to what it is. You can have different examples. It doesn't give you a lesson plan, so it's missing that. But there are a lot of great platforms out there that will give you a lesson plan based off these Mitre Attack. So it's definitely something to consider. I had something I wanted to say about that, but now I can't remember. So we'll just keep moving. Malware analysis. So that's sort of the kind of the big picture, just general career advice that I can offer right now. Lots of stuff I could talk about, many things I glossed over, but I wanted to, again, to kind of condense everything into this hour. Getting started with malware, though. So if we talk about malware analysis, then there are a few things that I think are just good places to start. Reading. I found reading to be instrumental, and finding good reading lists to do that. I have a list published on a blog that I don't update as much as I should. It's going to cover titles that no doubt you'll hear about as you're looking for resources. Practical Malware Analysis by Mike Sikorsky, IDAPRO Ghidra book by Chris Eagle, Shellcoder's Handbook by whoever wrote the Shellcoder's Handbook. These are all great books. They're a little bit dated. So we're probably due as a community for the next Practical Malware Analysis book. But the important thing is that a lot of what you're studying is still fundamental. Computers haven't fundamentally changed how they work, how they operate, how the operating system operates, the chipsets, the architectures. They haven't changed a lot in the last 10, 15, 20 years. So while some of the samples will be old, some of the techniques might be old, a lot of the fundamental knowledge is still there. So take a look at those, and certainly there'll be newer, pretty much no starch asterisk. If you go look on no starch, they are my go-to for just. I feel they are the top quality when it comes to cybersecurity content and books. There are other great publishers out there. Don't get me wrong, but no starch is just one of my go-to. Watch for the Humble Book bundles. You can do a search for those right now. They will have cyber bundles. They'll have hacking bundles. They'll have IoT bundles. They'll have Android hacking bundles. And this will give you access to just a whole bunch of ebooks for very, very, very little. So it is the most cost-effective way to really build your library, a digital library. If you're like me, I still like physical books. So, but for a digital library, this is a great way to go. Look for the Humble Book bundles. Look for free training environments. Cyber Defenders, we already talked about those. That's a great platform. I have some challenges out there that you can start to take, and thank you for the comments about those. I think somebody said they were enjoying those. Not a lot of malware analysis on Cyber Defenders. That's actually why I got the idea to start publishing them, because we see a lot of network traffic, and they've got a great variety of things, but not a lot of really what I consider kind of core malware analysis. So I was trying to fill a bit of that gap. And that's what's there. So you can go there. You can take those as CTF challenge. I've got some full walkthroughs, and I'll point those out in just a minute. Take a look at real world samples. I think that's a great place to start. It represents the real thing. Now, you do have opportunities to take, like frameworks and tools that are on GitHub that are either maybe used by red teams, but then also abused by threat actors. Cobalt Strike is a good example, although that's not it's not legally on GitHub if it's out there on GitHub. Where you can take a thing, you can build it from its project, and then you can look at the artifacts that it creates. Maybe it's a malicious Office document, maybe it's a beaconing thing or an implant, whatever the case may be. But really getting and handling the real thing is important. Make sure you have a proper lab though. You don't want to start handling and downloading malware. It's not magical. It's programs like everything else. You've got to execute it. You've got to find a way to make it run. It's got to have ability to connect out to the internet. Payloads have to be there. There's a lot of stuff that actually has to happen in most cases, but you don't want to accidentally infect yourself, your system, your home network, your wherever you work, your university network. So be careful. If you don't have a lab set up, I would make that number one on your checklist to figure out how to get a proper lab environment. Now, question is probably going to be, well, how do we do that? So I think that will be one of the follow-on session videos. If this seems like a good idea, then we'll keep doing them, and maybe that'll be something that we cover, because I've learned a lot over the years. I had my scare when one day I logged onto my NAS, my network attached storage, and I found a ransom note on it, and that was my big wake-up call that I have become way too sloppy in my handling. So never take that for granted. Here be dragons, right? Almost anything that I share and almost anything that you're going to grab from someone else is going to be in a password protected archive. That's an indication that, hey, there is something bad inside of this. You need to be careful. Typically the password is infected. Just remember that. Try it. If you get a zip and it says, hey, what's the password? Try infected. It's probably at 9 times out of 10 it is. So start by following someone's write-ups. I think that's a great thing to do. You'll find a ton of write-ups online, and it is very most of them are going to be very easy, because they're going to provide you with the sample. They're going to say, hey, we looked at this malicious office document with a hash of, and then they'll give you the hash, and then you can go and look for that hash. You can download it on places like the URL House or Malware Bazaar. Unfortunately, places like VirusTotal, unless you have a subscription, you can't download anything. So I tend to send all of my time and energy to places like the URL House and AbuseCH. So definitely consider supporting them. Definitely look for them to download samples. But look for write-ups. And again, that's just a search engine away. Search for something that's relevant to what you want to start learning. If we take this back to Mitre Attack, initial access, that's going to be your malicious office documents. That's probably going to be the greatest volume that you're going to deal with on a daily basis. And so it's probably going to it makes the most sense to me to start there. It's also going to be a little bit easier to get into reverse engineering and analyzing a malicious office document than jumping into trying to reverse engineer the latest binary threat using IDAPRO. So, but look for those write-ups, look for those videos, and then try to follow along. Even if you're just trying to do things step by step, that can still be very valuable learning. Yeah, PMA is still just looking at the comments here. Practical malware analysis is still a very important volume. It covers so many fundamental concepts. So I would say grab that, read it from cover to cover. I've done that a number of times over the years. Yeah, so the building the lab, I think that'll be probably something to look at in another video, because there's a lot of things to consider. There's a lot of things that I've learned through trial and error and silly mistakes over the years, and it's also going to depend on what type of lab environment you want to build. So I am going to cover that, but I think that really should be its own session. So maybe that'll be one of the next malware analysis sessions. I'm thinking that I'll split these into two different, I guess call them mentoring. I don't know what else to call them, but split them on those paths, and we'll do some basic RE stuff and some basic malware stuff. Building a lab environment is definitely a part of that. Yeah, and if anybody wants to collaborate on one or share efforts or whatever, I'm absolutely open to that as well. Okay, so what tools do you need? Well, it depends. One of the things that I have found to be a very common word when it comes to technology development, software development, cybersecurity is it depends. Why we can't, why everybody, it's hard to defend networks in a universal way is because everybody has different needs. It really depends. What do you want to protect? What does your network look like? So what tools you need, I think, are one of the next steps as well. And you're going to find, I'm going to use Remnix in just a minute. We'll get out of these slides. Distros like Remnix are great. Flare VM, they're great. Kali Linux, it's great because everything's there, everything's pre-configured. It should work, and oftentimes it does. But there's nothing to learn. Like, you don't learn Kali, you learn the tools inside of it. You don't learn Remnix, you learn the tools inside of it. They just provide an easy way to help you to get started. So, this is sort of the next step. Okay, I kind of have an idea of where I want to go. I want to start by analyzing malicious Office documents. Ooh, I want to get into reverse engineering. So I need to probably start learning a little bit of assembly. We get a lab environment built up, and now what tools do we start with? Because you don't want to try to use the wrong tool for the wrong job, right? I get a .NET binary. I'm not probably going to use IDAPRO for it. I'm going to find a different tool, because .NET binaries are like Java. They've got interpreted code inside of them that get parsed in a runtime, and we can actually decompile those instead of disassembling. So we can get something that looks like C# instead of looking like assembly. So again, I think this is a good part of those follow-on sessions. All right, let's start with Maldocs. What are the essential tools, and what information do they provide you so that you can use those tools at the appropriate time to get the insight or the data that you need? A lot of it comes with time, and oftentimes you'll find that there are many tools that help provide data, different aspects, different views into data based off of how you want to use them. Initial access. So again, kind of thinking about going on the left side of that Mitre attack, a lot of times the initial access, the initial stages of trying to get into breach an environment and gain access to a system, it's scripts, it's interpreted language, it's documents, Office documents with macros. These are, again, arguably easier to analyze, because most of the obfuscation is based on manipulating human readable text of the script. That doesn't mean that they're not going to be challenging, but it means in general, in my experience, they're easier to analyze and unravel than getting into binary code that needs to be disassembled. So you will see obfuscation, and that's why I say jump into real world malware, because it's just, you're going to get confronted with that obfuscation right away. And the first few times you look at it, or different techniques, it's going to feel like, oh gosh, this is sort of tedious, or this is maybe a bit overwhelming, or I'm not really sure how to handle this. But you start to develop patterns. You see, well, there's only so much we can do if the artifact we're dealing with is, an interpreted, it's a script, it's PowerShell. Well, that has to be valid PowerShell. It can not look like valid PowerShell, but at the end of the day, it has to be valid PowerShell syntactically in order to run on the host. So you'll eventually figure out how to really quickly unravel those, figure out tricks and techniques, know what tools work, know what tools don't. Macros, VBA, PowerShell. So as we move kind of further into the attack scenario, so now, we've got an initial compromise, malware is entering into the environment. Here's our Mitre Trojan, here's our whatever the case may be. These are oftentimes written in native, what I would say is native code. So probably originally authored in C or C++, maybe in assembly, or they have some assembly kind of inlined into the program. There are things like Rust and Golang that are being used as well that really offer their own unique challenges when it comes to reverse engineering. Overall, though, the point is that it gets more difficult. It's harder to, it's just, again, in general, it's harder to analyze these things. It's harder to, there's going to be more obfuscation. There's going to be more anti-analysis. They're going to be trickier. And it's just going to probably take more time. So you're not probably going to see a lot of folks in a SOC stopping what they're doing and committing 2, 3, 4, 5 days to reverse engineering a goo loader, as they would maybe being able to take 5 minutes to unravel some VBA macros. Okay, so time for a quiz. If you're looking at this, anybody know what this is? Just free fire in the chat. There's really no right answer, but if you have no idea what you're looking at, what tool it came from, what it's telling you, then that's a good sign that if you're interested in getting into malware and reverse engineering, these are the kind of things that you'll have to figure out, and what we'll talk about here in the last few minutes of the session. Yeah, prologue, absolutely. Don't we use Windows sysinternals to figure out what a malware does before we start? Well, yeah, so that's a good question. And we're talking about, kind of starting to dance into a little bit of what does a workflow look like? And there are so many different ways to go about that. Now, when I come approach this from a learning perspective, I'm going to take the long path. I'm going to say, well, if I give you a malicious Office document and I say, tell me what this does, I want you to get into the macros. I want you to unravel it. I want to understand how does it, what objects does it create? How does it utilize memory? Does it use a PowerShell script? What is it actually doing? Where does it embed the code that it's using? Where does it embed the extra strings? Because I think that when you're, starting off, that deep knowledge is very important. From a pragmatic point of view, you might just throw it in a sandbox and say, well, it looks like it downloads a payload from evilcode.xyz, and that payload looks like it was Mitre. Okay, that's a good answer as well. Took you a lot less time, but you don't understand deeper what that document is doing. So from an educational perspective, in this context that we're in right now, I'm always going to say, let's take the longer route in terms of learning. But no, it's going to depend on your situation. And you might find that, hey, you just need to get in there, get the answers as quick as possible, and move on to the next thing. So yeah, a few right answers. This is a prologue. So this is output from IDA Pro. I still use IDA Pro. I use Ghidra, probably not as much as IDA, but I'm old and lazy, and because I started my career using IDA, that's just it's just where I tend to gravitate towards. So this is a little bit of code from IDA. It's showing us a function, sub B3D044. That means that IDA has disassembled a binary. There's a function at that address, B3D044. It has identified 4 arguments that are provided to this function when it's called, and then the instructions below, a push, move, push. That is the prologue. So that is setting up the stack frame for this particular function. So we think about regions of memory. Everything executes in memory. Think about regions of memory. The stack is one of those regions that a program will have, a process will have access to in order to really control the flow of the program and data as it gets passed in and returned from different function calls. So the push EBP, move EBP, ESP, that's setting the base of the stack frame. Push EAX, I don't remember the context there. That could actually just be a way to grow the stack 4 bytes rather than a sub ESP4. But the point is, if RE is your thing, or you think it is, and this is all new, then now you've got something that you need to start looking at. And this is what makes some of the RE stuff a bit challenging, is because there's all of these concepts that really come together. As a reverse engineer, you're not doing any more than looking at assembly. You're looking at programs in assembly. If you have a decompiler, that's a reason people use Ghidra, because it has a decompiler. So instead of having assembly, you'll have something that looks a bit more like C. Again, I would say learn the assembly. Decompiler isn't always going to be there for you. It's not always going to give you an accurate decompilation results. And you're only going to become a stronger reverse engineer if you understand the assembly. So I say start at the assembly and then start using that decompiler as you get better. IDA Pro has a decompiler. Last I checked, it was really expensive. So I don't have it. I don't use it. I'm mainly, when I do RE stuff, I'm still looking at the assembly, disassembly output. Okay, well, let's shift gears here. I've got a few demos that I wanted to walk through before I wrap up. So unless I've made many mistakes on the YouTube live stream thing today, my plan is that this is not only streaming but recording, and then once I'm done, it'll just be available on my channel. If that's not the case, I'll probably reschedule this again with a better setup and make sure that it gets recorded, or I'll record it locally, whatever I have to do. Okay, so I'm going to shift over here. This is a Remnix. Remnix, you can find remnix.org. It's one of those tools, much like Kali. It's a distro. It's Ubuntu 18, I believe, and it's just got a bunch of tools already installed and configured. So it's a great thing to start with, because then you don't have to spend the time finding the tools, downloading them, configuring them, making sure dependencies are met. You can just get up and running. You can look under activities and let's see, go here. And again, you can find all sorts of things that are already available. Not everything, right? When it comes to malware analysis, I still find that I need both a Linux system and a Windows system. There are just certain tools, certain tasks that if I'm looking at Windows malware, I need to be analyzing it in a Windows environment. Money is why I use Ghidra. Yeah, that's going to be the decision for a lot of people. Ghidra is a great tool. Definitely is. I'm not here to say knock it in any way, shape, or form. It's great, and it does a really good job. It's very powerful, and it's open source. You just can't beat it. So with Remnix, if you want to start with some exercises, here is my GitHub. I have some exercises here at the very top. the 3 of these are on Cyber Defenders. So if you're looking at those CTF challenges and you didn't know it, I've got full write-ups here. You probably, if you were searching for things, you might have come across them. The last exercise I posted, it just doesn't make it for a good CTF, so I didn't CTF it. But I did offer this at DEF CON workshop last summer. So you can take a look at these. For example, Maldocs living off the land. This was a exercise from 2020. It's based off of Emitet. Then Emitet went away. Now Emitet's back. And while their tactics have changed, this still covers a lot of the core analysis, a lot of the same tools that you need. So you'll see I've got the challenge questions. If you want to just test yourself, this is the way to do that. Look at what is this question asking you? And then there's a full solution here. So we'll check that in a minute. Here's a link to the CTF on Cyber Defenders if you'd like to check that out. I did, of course, the obligatory Mitre Attack mapping. I've provided some suggested tools. You might find better tools. You might find different tools, different ways of going about solving it. But here is what I suggest. Here's what I did for the write-up. And so this will help you to know what you're learning and what you're following with. Some additional resources, looking at some videos here. I think both of these, one of these is a video, one of these is just a walkthrough or a blog post. And then, of course, there's the solution. So I won't go through it, but we'll take a look at it just so you can see it. All of the same questions, and then, right, this is going to walk you through in a narrative form to help you understand, not just get the answers, but hopefully better understand what were the educational objectives for this exercise. And that's something that I felt was sometimes difficult to get with some of the trainings I've taken in the past, is that if I didn't capture the lessons during the session, and maybe we're doing 9-10 hour days, which it's almost impossible to retain that much knowledge, then it degraded so quickly over time. So having these write-ups, these full kind of lab guide solutions, that's what I tried to capture. This is kind of what it would be like sitting in class with me, going through the analysis, or listening to me go through the analysis. So I won't scroll anymore in case you want to do those. I don't want there to be any spoilers. Outside of that, I'm one of many that post interesting things. Let's go back to the homepage here. Different projects, different artifacts I come across, to include documents that drop something. If I find it interesting, and then typically I post about it. We found some source code for a blacknet. I think that was an actual malware. Post that. So you'll find things like this here. If we take a look at one of the samples, here's an Excel doc that drops Qbot. You can just take a look. Here's the files, the artifacts that I've attached to this particular, what would you call this, submission, the date that I analyzed it. I used Cuckoo just in my own lab environment. Some screenshots from execution. This was an office doc. So, here's what the social engineering inside it looked like. Here's the process tree. Here's some of the network activity and maybe some IDS alerts. So that just gives you some insight into what you might find if you wanted to pick these samples up and analyze them. Artifacts are there in a zip, password protected. So I've already downloaded that. So there it is. You can just use 7-zip to extract. It's going to ask me if I want to overwrite. Since I've already done that, I'm just going to go ahead and overwrite. Password is infected, infected, all lowercase. Going to overwrite. Looks like everything extracted fine. So now we've got our two artifacts, a PCAP file, and our Excel spreadsheet. Oftentimes these extensions are added just to make sure that you don't accidentally double click. We're in a Linux VM, so that's really not an issue, although .xls, I suppose if I had LibreOffice or something, it's still open. I don't know what it would do with the macros. I might try to execute them. I'm not entirely sure. I've never actually tried, but it's just best to be safe. If you weren't sure, we want to look at what are the artifacts that we're dealing with. That's oftentimes the first step. What are we actually dealing with? We can use simple utilities like file to say, oh, this looks to be like it is an Office document, and maybe it'll tell me that this is Microsoft Excel. So that tells me, all right, it's Excel, probably initial access, maybe macros. So that pivots us to our macro analysis toolkit. I like to use OLE dump. And OLE dump, the name of the file, path to the file, and there we go. Sure enough, we have macros on this document. So what is the output from OLE dump? Again, you'll find it's tools like OLE dump have been around for quite a while, and they're in some regards they're really well documented and they're used in a lot of write-ups and videos and tutorials. And then in some regards, it's still hard to find information. For example, these streams on this document, it took me a while initially to figure out that these represent objects on a user form. Now here it says user form 1, but oftentimes these values in here are obfuscated. They're given nonsensical values, nonsensical names, and so it's a little bit harder to make, it can be a little bit harder to make those connections. Again, maybe we don't need to get into the code. We just need to know what it was trying to drop. We throw it in a sandbox. We see where some of the network activity, great, we're moving on. But let's say that it doesn't exhibit any behavior. Well, now we need to figure out, well, is there maybe some anti-analysis that it exhibited? And that would drive us to analyzing these in a bit more detail. If we want to pull the streams, so learning tools, capital M is for streams that contain macro code. Lowercase m is a stream. It's a macro module, but there's no code. So we can essentially skip those. Oftentimes, these are going to be associated with, in this case, it's not, but with user forms. So, and I scrolled back so I could get the value, 11. So -s indicates the stream we want to investigate, and -v will just decompress that. And now we've got content, macro content dumped to the screen here. So we could redirect that to a file and open it up in a text editor, get syntax highlighting and all that good stuff. Again, this won't get too deep right now, but you can see that it's plain text. It's going to be obfuscated. Dresden and Narrat, hopefully that's not bad words in a language I'm not familiar with, but you'll see that they're trying to obfuscate the flow of the program, variable names, function names, but it's all there. We can now analyze this to understand exactly what it is doing. You just have to commit the time. And the more you do it, the faster this comes. Here's that user form. So why would they use objects on a user form? To embed content, to embed strings, to embed shellcode, to embed whatever. And this now is them using it. Again, they use the object name user form 1, which makes it a little more obvious. But if that had been, ABC 22478, it would be a lot harder to determine or maybe make that connection. Let's see here. Yeah, OLE dump in the suite does. I wouldn't disagree. I think there is some documentation that's maybe missing. It would be interesting to pull out the streams. Yeah, absolutely it would. And those would be things that I would continue to do. If we go back to OLE dump, okay, we've got these objects here. So stream 10. If we just provide the stream, oh, there was nothing. Oh, I redirected the output. There we go. Oh, look at that. We've got URLs. Okay, so it looks like it appears on the surface anyway that they probably hit download URLs or something for additional tools in these forms. They didn't bother to obfuscate them. So these we probably, if we just did strings, I've never actually looked at this doc, so I'm not sure what we're going to get. Oh, I know there's probably a way to just do this with grep, but deal with it. Yeah, there we go. See, so we probably, since they weren't hidden, we could have just grepped those. But those are the things you learn. And had you just done this and not understood how user forms, now if they were obfuscated, you couldn't dump those, maybe decode them, look at the logic and the macros, decode them. So you miss out on this. Again, I take the more verbose route when dealing with educational stuff. Yes, Didier deserves many, many, many free beers. And I couldn't agree more. I appreciate everything that he has done and contributed over the years. It's immense. So please don't take the documentation could be better as anything negative. He's done so much. So yeah, I 100% agree. Okay, so anyways, that's just to give you some ideas. So there's a lot of great places to start. I've got, if you go to the YouTube channel, I have a playlist here, conferences, talks, and workshops. If you view the playlist, you'll see this Hack in the Box workshop, just under 4 hours. That was 4 hours of just malicious Office documents. So, because we're not going to cover it here, if you want to check that out, that's covers, it's really, I want to say it's quite 100% beginner level, but it's definitely in that sort of vein. And so that'd be a great place to start checking out if you want something that's a little bit more of an organized or structured way of presenting that content. Okay, I'm getting a little long-winded, so I'm going to move over to, so this is my Windows VM. I just went ahead and installed Flare. So it's I guess a Flare VM. You can check out their project if you haven't on GitHub. It's been published and supported by Mandiant. It's very similar to Remnix, except that with the licensing issues that come along with Windows, you have to bring your own VM, and then you can download the script, and it'll turn it into the Flare VM. Pre-install a bunch of tools. It's got an updater thing, so I think that's really helpful. Anytime I want to make sure I'm on the latest Ghidra or at least a recent version, I can just run the updater and it updates all the tools. So really, really great. It seems to be really stable. It takes some time. It fills up your disk. So the thing to consider with Windows and Remnix is with having all the tools, you might not need 70% of them, but they're there. So they make the system, they make VM a little bit bigger. This is Microsoft, this is Windows, so it's even more bloated, I suppose. You need a little bit of disk space. You have to have your own VM, but this is really great. So this is what I did. This is what I installed here. What I'm going to talk about is just a little bit more now about the reverse engineering and getting started with reverse engineering. So they really go hand in hand, although I find them to be two different starting points. Like eventually your malware analysis you'll come to a point where you need to be reverse engineering, but it doesn't have to, in my opinion, it doesn't have to be right away. If you want to get into RE, you kind of got to start here. RE can be for more than malware. There's vulnerability research, there's bug hunting, there's code security, and there's any number of reasons that you'd want to do that. I published a handful of files here. This GitHub needs a little bit of attention, but if you look at my repos, GitHub, just jstrosh, learning malware analysis and learning reverse engineering, the idea is the same with both of them, and that is to provide a few source code that you can compile, and then 100%, 99% of what they're doing, maybe minus what the compiler added, and then it's a little bit easier to study these things. And that's the same idea with the malware analysis. Now with reverse engineering, I tried to break it down a little bit further. For example, control structures are a great place, in my opinion, to start. Right? Anytime I teach an RE course, these are the things that I start with. Let's cover the basics. Do you know what an array looks like in assembly? Do you know what an if statement looks like in assembly? Do you know what loops look like? Because once you can recognize those things, then that helps you to build the context around the flow of the program that you're looking at, and then start to fill in the pieces with what's actually going on. So if I just take stack intro, because we were talking about the stack earlier, here you can see a sample program. Again, they're meant to be very simple because I don't want to get the focus of the program bogged down by a big program. Those can come later. Right now, the focus is on just seeing the stack in action. So we have our main method. We have a function that has 3 arguments, 1, 2, 3, 4. This function does nothing of any real value because we're just using this as a way to study how the stack works. A couple of local variables. It does the summation. It doesn't even return a value. It's a void function, but it's easy for you to change that as well. But now what you can do is you can download this. So I've already saved that. You can look at the source code as well as compile it. How I compile? Okay, we've got the Flare VM. So the developer command prompt has been installed. If you wanted to just set this up on your own, you could go grab the Visual Studio. I've lost track. I haven't looked at it in a while. It's always just been a community edition. There's a free version out there that once you install it, you get the developer command prompt. Let's make that a little bit larger. Okay, does that look good? Let me know if that's hard for anyone to see visually. I need to go to my desktop. Okay, CLS clears the screen, and then CL, because we launched the developer command prompt, that just adds the path to the C compiler to this environment. So you can invoke it versus, let's say we just opened cmd.exe, or Commander was what Flare VM installs. It's a terminal emulator thing. But if we just did this and we tried to do CL, you're going to get this warning, not recognized as a program because it's not in the path. The operating system is not looking for CL in the right locations. Okay, so CL, very simple, stack intro. Right? There's arguments, there's things you can do. It's an optimizing compiler, which if you're not familiar with those are things that you'll learn about. Optimizing compilers can optimize your code for size, for speed. It can significantly change things in your code. It can remove your code. It does a lot. You'll see here in a minute, it adds a lot too. There's a lot of code that gets added to help with things like security protections and being prepared to run in the environment. But we just want to look at the program and we run our compiler. If we had any syntactical errors, so let's say you made a mistake, you were modifying the code. Let's say I made a mistake, committed something with the typos, then you get errors. Errors mean you didn't get a binary. Warning and info means something's probably not quite right, but there is a binary. So you can check that. If you're ever unsure, I recommend deleting this every time. I think it's just rem, isn't it? Whoop. Rem, no. Del shows how often I do this. Okay, delete del, del, that seemed to work. If you're not sure, delete it and then compile it again. If you have an executable, then you're good. So if you don't get the executable, look at those warnings, those errors, they'll be up here. Make sure you fix your problem. Okay, after you get your binary, so now that's taken this code and it's converted it into the difference between disassembled, decompiled. It's converted it into native code. It's now ones and zeros inside of a PE file ready to be executed by the operating system, or in this case, ready for us to look at it in something like IDAPRO or Ghidra. So I've got IDAPRO installed here. I think this is actually mine. I installed it after the fact. We kind of skip, just next here until IDA launches a screen. Let's bump the font size up real quick. Let's go 16. Okay, going to let this just do its disassembly for a while, and then here we are. We're in main. Now, yeah, rem is remarks in DOS. Okay, okay. Well, I don't know where that came from. I guess it just jumped into my head. We're in main, and this is much like our previous discussion with the malware side of things. We have to get to know our tools. IDAPRO helps to navigate us to main. Is main the entry point in the program? Right? No, but main is right here. It's where we start as the developer, typically writing code. So that's helpful. We can see, oh, here's 321. Here's our function call. This is doing all the stuff that function does. But if we didn't recognize that, it could be difficult. So we can look at things like cross-references. So I highlight this label main and hit the X key. And this says, hey, there is a cross-reference. There is another place in this program that calls this location. So we can go there. Ooh, all right. So that means that main is called. Well, if we scroll up to the beginning, we can see, let's see where this is called. Okay, one location. Oh, look, we're at start. Start calls security init cookie, and then it jumps to that location that we just came from. This is the actual entry point of the program. And one thing I like to show, just to really, really emphasize this, I hope this works. If we try to build a cross-reference graph from our current location, this is every function that is called from where we're currently at, right? So that's a lot of code that has nothing to do with that little tiny program that we wrote. All of this was added by the compiler. So a tool like Ghidra, which last I looked, it's been a couple months since I've looked at Ghidra, it didn't help you locate main. It just drops you at start. You have to navigate to main. If you didn't know this and you started trying to analyze code from start, look how quickly you could get lost into things that aren't necessarily relevant to the analysis that you're trying to accomplish on the program. So those are the things that you learn. Sometimes they're easy, sometimes they're very difficult to find out, and why having guidance and help can be very important. So now we know, well, that's not main. Here's main. It identifies it for us, but had it not, typically you can look for 3 pushes Three pushes, that represents argv, argc, and environment P. Those are the three arguments that are typically passed to main. This program, I didn't do it. They are optional. But if you look at environment, there they are, right? argc, argv, and environment P. So this gives you an opportunity to learn a little bit more at the code level as to how these work. Those are always passed to main, and now you can see exactly how that's being done. So from this function, oftentimes with Windows, three pushes and then a call that's a pretty good indication that it's main. Yeah, so question is this a part of, this is a licensed copy of IDA. This is 7.2. I'm not even sure what version IDA's on right now. Does anybody know offhand? Is it maybe like 8? I don't know if we're quite that far. Stable release, 7.7. Let's see if I can find that on their site. Well, it looks like, if this Wikipedia thing is accurate, 7.7. So whatever. I mean, it's old, but this is a licensed version. IDA offers a number of options now. I suppose they felt a little bit of pressure from Google, or I'm not sorry, from Google, from Ghidra. There is the freeware, there is the demo, there is an academic license, and I know at the university here, I've had colleagues that have been able to get academic licenses for their students to use, and it's not been very difficult. So, interestingly enough, though, I have found that these different versions of IDA all kind of work differently. The demo and the free work a little bit differently than maybe the licensed version. Simple things I found over the years, that like the free version might identify main in this binary, but then the demo version doesn't. And so, if in doubt, you can install them. I think you can install both of the free and the demo. You can always grab Ghidra, but in terms of finding main, maybe that's not going to be as helpful. But yeah, this is a licensed version, so it should be pretty similar to what you would get started with. With the Flare VM, it does give you the option to install IDA free, or maybe it is already installed. It looks like it's already installed 7.0. I think the reason I didn't use it, because typically I use whatever those I'm working with have, but I think in this case the graph, building the graph didn't work. That's why I was a little nervous about it earlier. I wasn't sure if it was actually going to work, because I think it was this demo version. It doesn't build the graph, but everything else is pretty much the same. Certainly the output should be the same. It's just some of the signature stuff can be not as good. So, those, that's a good place to start with looking at and looking at programs and taking the source code, looking at it disassembled. Now, if the assembly is still really unclear to you, well, then you got to take a step back further and look at some of the basics of assembly, and that is then where you'll want to spend your time as you're then starting to look at these sample programs and figuring out how they work. If you are not sure where to start with assembly, I have a really old set of videos. Let me see if I can find them real quick. I've long had it on my list to redo this, but I just haven't gotten around to it. But I have a playlist of old videos here that are available. This covers what I would consider all of the essential concepts. They're not recorded quite the same way I would do today. Eventually I'll replace that, but it is something that you could check out if you wanted to get started with the basics of assembly. What is a stack frame? What does EBP mean? What is even a mnemonic? When it makes sense of all that stuff that we were looking at, this is a place to get started. There is also a PC assembly, Paul Carter. And of course, I think No Starch has a book, and there's a lot of academic, assembly is something that's been taught in academia for a very long time. But I used to use this PDF when I taught assembly. I think it's a great PDF. It's a great place to start. It's not too big and too overwhelming. So they definitely, this is something that you could check out as well. This PDF. And this is another person that deserves many thanks because the content that they've put out has been very helpful for me and my students over the years. Okay, so we could spend all afternoon talking about RE, but the point here was just to give some ideas on how to get started, talk a little bit about career, and then those could be some follow-on sessions. So, kind of the last things I wanted to talk about today, social media. It is something that I was not too active in until recently. The last couple, 2-3 years, I found it to be, social media-ness aside, a really great place for information security, for cybersecurity, for a lot of great folks that are sharing the work that they're doing, IOCs on a daily basis to really great write-ups and content. So if you're not already looking for that stuff on Twitter, this is a pretty good place to do it. A lot of communities are going to have their own places to go and hang out. Conferences will have their own Discords or Slacks. Research groups will have their own Discords or Slacks, and so those are also things that you can seek out as you're building your network and understanding. You're trying to build that plan that you want for your own career progression. That's it. So what's next? I'm gonna continue to post content on social media. I'm gonna do a lot more of these live sessions on YouTube. I promise next time I'll actually get the tech right and get the stream going as promised on the right stream thing. Probably start hosting these on a regular basis, but I do really appreciate and solicit any feedback. Please feel free to leave feedback here in the chat. If you're watching this and you've made it all the way to the end, use the comments below after it's been live. I'd like to do these on a more regular basis. And so if anyone has specific topics, I know from the forum that I started discussing at the beginning of this, there are more topics that I'm going to cover there. And I'm going to use that as my motivation for the next sessions that I'm going to schedule out. And then, like I said, looking for your feedback. So with that, that's all I really wanted to formally present. I'm just going to hang out for a few minutes here and see if there's any questions that come through on the chat. Thank you all. It went a little bit long. Again, thank you for dealing with my technical issues getting started. Appreciate you being here and taking time out of your day. Anything you want to collaborate on, any comments you have, please feel free to reach out to me. I've got many channels of communication open. Outside of that, have a great and amazing weekend. Yeah, it's more. Okay. Well, I'm glad my OBS skills, my almost non-existent OBS skills here saved me at the last minute. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. Okay, so question, does MA fall under CyberSeek career pathway? I'm not sure. I know CyberSeek's, I should know it, but nothing's coming to the forefront of my mind. Malware analyst fall under like a security researcher. Yeah, so I meant to say this earlier. That's probably what I forgot, is that malware analysis, I think a true malware analysis position is going to be, they're going to be harder to find. It's likely going to be if you're finding actual malware analysis positions is probably with a bigger company that has the resources to have a security team plus malware analysts there on staff. You will likely find, though, with a lot of other organizations, malware analysis plays a part of the role, but you might be a threat researcher, you might be a SOC analyst, maybe you have to get to a level 2 or 3 though before you're doing a lot of kind of behind the scenes sort of malware analysis stuff. So it might take some time to get there, and it might not always be clear that malware analysis is part of the role based off of the initial job description. So I think you'll find it to be a little bit harder to. I think you won't find just straight up malware analysis postings as you will, threat defender, security operations, network security, and might have to either read between the lines, read the job description, or possibly talk to someone who's posted it to see actually what's in the job. I would say, the thing to watch out for is malware analysis. I'm super lucky. The work I do for HP, I am in a research role. I don't have to do incident response. Not that it's a bad thing, but I'm not sucked into things that happen throughout the day that are out of my control. Working in a SOC, I don't have to respond to incidents or alerts. I get to do real research, and so I find that to be great because that research can be time consuming. And so I just would be careful. There might be a lot of positions out there that, yeah, you can do some malware analysis, but we need you to monitor the SIM and deal with all of this other stuff that could become very time consuming and distracting. Still very valuable experience, don't get me wrong, but it might not be what you're after. So you have to be a little bit careful there. Yeah, I would agree. REs touch a lot of things, but it takes. I think it takes a while to get to a point where you feel like I still don't know if most days if you asked me in a bar if I felt really comfortable as an RE. I've learned a ton. I still feel like there's always more to learn, but it takes time, and so that's part of that like daunting thing. Don't let it intimidate. If you're passionate about it, or if you're focused on it, or you just are determined. For me, I was just determined. Like I am going to learn how to RE come heck or high water, and eventually it all started to connect. All the pieces started to come together. It kind of had, it was like an aha moment for me. Over the course of a week or something, everything just started coming together. So it's a lot. I don't know. It definitely, like anything, time, practice, mentorship, it becomes easier. And then yeah, they can do a lot. REs touch a lot, and I mean RE in a broad sense. I oftentimes put it in the box of looking at things in IDA, but we were reverse engineering macro code. That's the process of taking what's there and unraveling the obfuscation that was added to it to figure out the intent. So you'll RE a lot of things in any security role, really. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm really surprised. Thank you for the feedback. Really surprised on the C++ content that I did post that. I find that very interesting as well. That's why I posted it. There's more that I have planned there, but day job and stuff gets in the way often. It is really interesting. I teach a graduate course that we go through a little bit of C++ stuff, and I'm always surprised at how I don't know, difficult folks find it. And so I think it's a really interesting topic, and definitely I'll keep, well, it's on my list to do some more content there. Okay, well, anything else immediate? If not, once I end the session here and get it posted, please feel free to use the comments below to ask any questions, to continue the conversation. Again, appreciate everybody's time here, and especially the Audible and having to jump sessions. I'm glad that it looks like most folks were able to get the notification. I wasn't really sure how to do that, so I'm glad the word got out. And I definitely, yeah, do some live RE. I think definitely that is next steps. I'm kind of thinking of these almost like a mini class. I think it'd be great to pick some topics, lay out some things that we'll do. Here are the resources that we're going to take on, and just do these live sessions. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, great. Ask questions. Yeah, absolutely. What sandboxes do I use? I used to use Cuckoo quite extensively, and I still think it's a good option. It's a little bit dated now. There is a Cape fork, CAPE, that is up to date and maintained and very active. So I'm in the process of, I decommissioned my Cuckoo server here in my lab environment, and I'm moving to Cape. I just haven't quite gotten the time to finish setting it up. So I typically use that. I use feed sources like, well, I mean, URL House definitely to get samples, but some of my own discovery through tools that I've created. So yeah, Cape is awesome, and that's the one that I'll use. Online sandboxes, I'm very fond of Triage. I believe that's most of the Cuckoo folks, and AnyRun. I use AnyRun quite a bit. So still do, and I find those to be two really good platforms, really good with the anti-analysis. They both provide a little bit of, they both have their own benefits, but they're both very strong. So they just, sometimes it doesn't beat having your own sandbox running locally. So I think Cape or even Cuckoo, if you wanted to just get started with something, they're Cape's a fork of Cuckoo, so if you learn Cuckoo, you've learned a lot of Cape. They've made the install. The thing that I think hangs up a lot of folks initially is just there's a lot of opportunity to make small mistakes when setting up Cuckoo that then things don't work. Where I think they've automated a lot of the setup with Cape. In either case, though, I've actually got a couple of videos that walk you through the Cuckoo setup. It's not too bad. It's really not. They have, just like other projects we've talked about, they have great documentation, a lot of good tutorials out there to help get you up and running. Lab setup. Okay, yeah, definitely. We'll be considering a lab setup. For other sandboxes, somebody touched on it earlier using sysinternals. I do have other dedicated systems, physical hosts, and virtual machines that if I want to run something manually and use some of the sysinternals tools, I will. Maybe I want to let something run for 12 hours, or I've tried to build more of a domain at home, and it's difficult and time consuming, and there's all the automation problems and stuff. But there's a number of things that I do use and have used, but Cape and Cuckoo for kind of my day in and day out are what I'm using if I need something for my own resources. I don't have access to anything other than that. I don't have access to an any run premium or a triage premium. I've got the same access that everyone has. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap up the session then and end the stream. Thank you again. I'm going to take all of this comments and this content, and definitely stay tuned. We'll do another session here in the next couple, 2 or 3 weeks, or soon. I better not commit myself to a time. I'm bad at making good on that, but definitely we'll find a time to do this again. So with that, thanks everyone again. I'm going to end the stream, and I hope to cross paths at a conference or continue on social media in the meantime. Yes, thank you all.